Welcome to another Mo Monday, moTV. Every month we interview. We've got a special guest on that we are curious about, has something to offer the Mo Mondays community. And this month is no different. In fact, I'm especially excited. We've got somebody by the name of Larry Ackerman. I've known him a long, long time. And he believes in the value creating power of identity. Already we're on a Mo Mondays topic. He's written two groundbreaking books on the subject. The first is Identity is Destiny, Leadership and the Roots of Value Creation. The other book is The Identity Code, the 8 essential questions for finding your purpose and place in the world. Yes, Mo Mondays all over this. This work is for individuals who want to live more fulfilling, meaningful, productive lives, but it's also for executives and people who want to bring more of themselves into their work. That's what Larry has done for a wide range of organizations and their executives, like literally all over the world. Dow Chemical, Westinghouse, Fidelity, National Australia Bank, Upjohn, Merck, Deloitte, KP, you name it, he's worked with them. And when he's not leading clients to themselves, he's standing in a rushing mountain stream fly fishing. So does Larry sound like a good fit for moTV or not? Stay tuned. We're going to bring him right back. Welcome, Larry Ackerman.
Pleasure to be here with you, Michelle.
Oh, no, this is great. I'm excited that you're here. We've known each other a long time, and we've been on each other's newsletter lists. I love your newsletter. In fact, I'm going to put a plug in for you right now. It says if anybody's interested in this general topic to sign up to your newsletter. It's really good. And always thought-provoking, insightful, and you talk about identity. How long have you been doing this?
Well, professionally, basically my whole career, about 35 plus years. It's just always been the center of gravity for me and what I do. I've been consulting that whole time and coaching in the last 15 years for individuals. So the identity, the realm of identity has been my, what can I say, my sandbox forever, basically.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that, it's like with me and storytelling. Now everybody talks about storytelling. Now a lot of people talk about identity, but when you and I were doing this 20 years ago or more, 35 in your case, there was some education involved. People weren't, they didn't clue in immediately to what we were talking about. Here's what I'd like to do. Let's just get grounded right away in who you are and what you're passionate about and why you do it. I'm going to play a clip, and you're going to tell me, it's just a 1-minute clip, but we're going to talk about this clip a little bit after.
I have a great passion for the power of human identity as a governing force in every one of our lives. I know what it is to know who you are and to live out of that place that is like a center of gravity, and that when you don't have it, you're all over the place. You have no idea how to make the right choices. But when you do have it, when you can articulate it, when you can say, this is who I am, this is how I create value in the world, this is my fundamental gift, your identity is your gift to the world, everything becomes easier. Everything becomes aligned. Everything becomes quite beautiful. It's not a bowl of cherries kind of life. Life is hard, but it gives you a sense of integrity, a sense of authenticity that is unassailable. Most of us think that identity changes with time. I don't believe that. I think our identities are formed at conception. The seeds of who we are there. And that what happens over the course of our lives is that those identities become, if we're fortunate enough, become deeper and richer, more experiential, and consequently more important and more powerful in terms of shaping relationships.
There you go. That was a clip. I don't know how long ago it was, but you stated really clearly and plainly that you are all about identity. So now I know these days identity is almost like a catchword. It's used for a whole bunch of things. So let's get right into it and do some level setting. Is what do you mean about identity, and how does it compare to the different definitions that people understand it?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. So from the clip you just showed, which is probably 8 years ago, something like that, 8 years ago, 6 years. It's very clear. I'm a humanist at heart, and I believe that identity. I define identity as that unique combination of characteristics that define one's potential for creating value in the world, meaning to create something of meaning and substance that is just yours, something that is unique to who you are. That is my view of identity, and that follows along the the thinking of really great thinkers like Abraham Maslow and Carl Jung and Erik Erikson. That's the notion of identity that I'm getting at. Pardon. What I'm not getting at is how identity has become, or identity politics. The notion of identity, in my opinion, has been diminished severely as a result of how it has been appropriated in the world we live in today. So I'm not talking about your race. I'm not talking about your religion, what you do for a living, whether you're a parent. That's not where we are here. I'm talking about something that transcends what I call the labels. Those are labels. They're important, but that's not what I think of when I think of identity. I think about that unique, powerful center of gravity that resides within you, and that to touch it and to bring it out and to live through that lens is quite an extraordinary experience.
It's almost like all of those labels are for classes of people, and the identity that you're talking about is uniquely individual.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And I think, both have merit. Both have a place in this world. That's great. But it upsets me when I hear people bandied around identity, and identity is going to change, and what do you want your identity to be this week or next month? That just diminishes its fundamental power.
So let's go back to, and I see we've already got some people on the Facebook Live, and this is going to be available on YouTube, Facebook, and on the moMondays website as well. So we are speaking to people live, and we're also speaking to people who are listening and watching this later. I'm curious, if you take me back to where this comes from for you. When did you get this idea of identity? How did it kind of formulate in your mind?
So it didn't formulate, it emerged. And here's the story. Speaking of storytelling, this all began when I was 4 years old. When I was 4 years old, I was born cross-eyed, and my parents wanted to have my eyes fixed. So put me into the hospital, tried to explain what was going to happen, but 4-year-olds don't really understand a lot of this stuff. Anyway, so I was in the hospital. Parents were not allowed in the operating room, so I was completely alone on the table. And I remember having these canvas straps pulled across my chest and my pelvis to keep me, down, I guess. And as you might imagine, I became pretty upset. And, no, mommy and daddy weren't there. I was alone. I was with these people in robes and masks, and it was pretty terrifying. So at one point, and I've been getting more and more distressed. At one point, I actually thought that I was going to die. I thought that I had done something unspeakable for which I was being punished. And as that unfolded, I asked myself a question, obviously inside, not verbally. And the question I asked was, what is so wrong with me that I must be changed from who I am? A split second later, I basically disappeared. I literally split in half. Part of me went away, part of me stayed on the table, and to survive. And ever since that experience in the hospital, identity has been the governing force in my life. That's the backstory.
It's almost like you, in that moment when your body split, you were able to see yourself from a third perspective. Is that?
Well, almost. I actually had right before I kind of what I call went away, I had this incredible sensation of being alive, of being. I was aware of myself, which it sounds strange, but doesn't happen all that often.
No, and that's exactly what I mean when I say a third perspective. It's like being able to see yourself. Having some philosopher talks about having an awareness of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Not, it's not easy to kind of imagine that.
So that's what happened to me. And that's, so when people ask me, and they do, well, how'd you get into this field? Did you study it in school? Whatever. I said, no, this is deeply rooted in personal experience. So that's when I say I know what it is to know who you are and how powerful it is. I'm being quite literal. I do know. Mm-hmm. I do know. I've been there. I'm there every day. So that's what happened. And then it's interesting because, the universe works in strange ways. Went to school, got my degree, came out of graduate school, and wound up backing my way into an arcane consulting field called identity consulting. But again, 30 years ago, it wasn't what I'm talking about. Identity consulting back in the day was like branding. It was about positioning and naming and logos and visual systems and, corporate identity as it was defined a long time ago. That's fine. But then as I got into it, I realized, there's a lot here that people are just not talking about. And it was like as they say, Michelle, the rest is history. I just took off. I had such a good time discovering, learning, researching. It was just like opening the floodgates. So that's how I wound up getting into the business, and I've been in it ever since. And I have been innovating ever since with my books, my writings, my processes. It's been a heck of a ride.
It sounds like our trajectories are different than similar, almost parallel, because I also started my professional career on the advertising side, where we talk about corporate identity and all of that. And then I ran my own ad agency, and it was my job to help our clients figure out their positioning and whether it was naming or tagline and all of that. I developed something called Essential Message. But what I found was that if I do my job right, and it sounds like you do a similar but different job, but if I do my job right, I'll end up digging deeper than any of the previous marketers they've ever worked with. And what I found was that if I dug deep enough, there was always a story, and it was very often a personal story that helped explain why we are who we are as a company or as an individual. Do you find that as well?
Absolutely. There's always a story, call it backstory. There's always a reason. My job, I like to call it, is to help make unconscious knowledge conscious, both in organizations and individuals. In my, in my work with individuals, when I'm coaching people, um, my first comment basically is, look, I don't have any of the answers. You have all of the answers. My job is just to help you track them down, open you up to yourself. Literally, there's so much that you know that you don't know, that it's there. And I mean that totally sincerely. It's my job to help tease it out, to help you or me maybe help you put it into words, give it language, name it. Because once you can name something, once it's articulated, you can do something with it. If you can't name it, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and there are people,
So,
there may be people watching and listening to this who not only cannot name it, but don't even know that there is something to be named. So when you start, in any business, people have to be already interested in what you do. They already have to be at least a little bit evolved to want what you have. When you start,
yes,
when you start working with either a company or an individual, and it'll be both, what clues might they be noticing that would make them think, I bet I should, this Larry guy, he may help us.
the very, very different, what I'll call presenting symptoms. On the organizational side, on the business side, when I'm, looking at working with an organization, the presenting symptoms are things like, frankly, loss of brand relevance, chronic employee turnover, leadership dissension. There's a whole series of symptoms which will mergers and acquisitions, by the way, tend to be a very big initiator of my work. But there are a lot of symptoms in the business world that people begin to scratch their heads and go, why is this happening? What's going on here? So my comeback is, when is it that a business problem or a business challenge it's an identity challenge? And if you start there, if we start by, clarifying how you create value as a company, as an organization, then maybe some of these seeming problems will sort themselves out, assuming that you apply what you've learned. On the personal side, the symptoms tend to be someone who's in their 40s or maybe 50s, and they're stuck in a career path. They don't know how to get out of it. They are lost. They're upset. Those are great clients for me because they tend to be ready for something different. They're not going to a career counselor. They're looking for something else, and I'm the something else. And again, here too, if you have a career challenge, perfect. We'll look at it. But let's start out through the lens of identity. Let's work on clarifying and articulating who you are at your core, and then using that insight to understand what the career challenge really is and where you may want to go from here. So that's the power of an identity-based practice. It gives you a foundation that otherwise you would just never have.
And I don't want to put you on the spot. I know I hate it when people ask me this question, but because my mind immediately goes blank, right? But I think what I'm going to ask you is, like, without mentioning names or specifics for privacy and all those things, can you talk a general about what kind of transformations you've helped either individuals or corporations go through with this identity-based lens?
Yes. I can. Okay, so let's take a corporate example, and I don't mind naming names. I mean, in some cases I do, but not in all cases. So let's take Dow Chemical. You mentioned Dow earlier. Dow is probably one of the top five textbook cases for me in my career. And I had started working with them in the 2000s and worked with them for like 5 years. Long story short, it is a long story. They were struggling to figure out why they couldn't grow above the rate of inflation over years, and they didn't know what they were or who they were beyond the chemicals and the plastics and the agri products that they made. So the CEO, Bill Stavropoulos, very curious man. And by the way, curiosity is part of what makes for a great client. Said, can you help us work on some of this? I said, yeah. So we did. And what we discovered was that Dow, who regarded itself as being in the chemicals company, we said, no, you're not in the chemicals business. You may make that stuff, but what drives you is to constantly improve what is essential to human progress. And you'd say, well, those are big fancy words. How did you get there, Larry? And what happened, and this is one of the most powerful moments in my work, we actually were able to trace what was then about $25 billion in product sales all the way back down to their end uses. They had never done this. This is the 102 years they had never seen this. So we actually came back to the management. We said, here's a list of 10 markets that you guys serve that are fundamental to human progress, from transportation and water purification and health. I mean, and they had never been able to see this before. And it was based on that analysis and that insight that we said, you got to rethink the nature of what business you're in, because you're missing huge opportunities. And they were. And that changed their relationship with big customers like Procter and Gamble and Kimberly-Clark. I mean, it caused a real shift in the mindset of the management team. So that's a corporate example.
What I find when you're able to bring them to that more universal, I mean, I don't like to use the word mission, but it's the mission of the company, and you make them aware of that. In my experience, with the companies that I work with, it also helps all of their people. It's that thing, we all want to be attached to something that's bigger than ourselves, something important, something impactful for the world, and you're helping everybody who works at that company to see their own higher purpose in that corporate mission.
to find themselves in it.
Yeah.
I mean, after I gave one of the presentations I gave, a woman came up to me afterward, introduced herself, and she said, now I know, I've been here 20 years and now I know why I'm here.
Yeah. Okay, I interrupted you. You were about to talk about an individual example.
I was. You're right. So individuals will remain nameless. This is a woman who was an attorney, probably in her mid-40s. This is just a couple of years ago. I met her at a conference that was put on by AARP, and it was a small conference. It was like 25 people. It was a weekend thing. It was very cool. Anyway, we got to talking over a glass of wine. I told her what I was doing. I wasn't a speaker. I was just attending at AARP was my client, so I was attending on their behalf. And about maybe a month afterwards, she contacted me. She said, I'm really very unhappy. And I hope you don't mind my telling you that. And I said, no, I don't mind at all. I'm a very good listener, which I better be. And so she began to tell me what was going on and about her work and her family. And on the phone, she began to tear up. And she'd say, I'm sorry, I apologize. I still don't ever apologize. Just never do that. So we got into a great, conversation. And she asked me if I could help her. I said, I'd be happy to help you. And this was a case where, where a career challenge was really an identity challenge. So it wasn't like, where do I go next? It was, what do I do with my life? And I worked with her. First name was Alexis. We'll leave it there. Alexis and I worked together. And she wound up probably 6 months later realizing that she was like, what is she? It was like being a 38 short, no, a 42 long and a 38 short suit. It's like a little too tight. So she wound up ultimately switching careers slowly. She didn't just like blow up everything, that I don't recommend that. But she wound
Glad
up
to hear you
going.
say that. Yeah.
No, I don't. I'm not
Yeah.
a big believer in blowing up one's life. I think you do it judiciously, do it carefully, do it
Mm-hmm.
smart. But she wound up actually becoming the head of head of marketing, because she was working for a marketing firm for a hospital system. Who knew?
Mm-hmm.
And she's been there, I think, now for at least a couple of years. After I worked with her, she seems quite happy. She has a whole new lease on life, and she was able to migrate from just the lawyerliness of her daily activity to a much more both creative, intellectually creative, and challenging work. So that's an example of working with a person.
And I just want to connect the dots. It's by looking at, presumably, defining her identity that made her make decisions that were more aligned with that identity.
Yes, it is. One of the processes that I've developed and use with individuals is called identity mapping, and it's on my website. There's a discussion about it, and it's a pretty
if as a
comprehensive
visitor, website visitor, can I just take a look at it? Is it interactive? Because I don't remember that piece.
No, it's
Okay.
not. It's descriptive
Okay,
on the
descriptive.
website.
And
But there is
LarryAckerman.com.
LarryAckerman.com.
Good.
But you will find, to your point about interactive, there are three major chunks. One is called identity-based living. One is identity-based leadership, because I do work with leaders. And one is identity-based management. Identity-based living, at the very bottom of the page, there are my books, there are tools, articles. One of the tools is an online version of what I call the identity discovery deck. It's like a card deck, literally. This is the online version, the electronic version. And, you can take it online and you might find out some really interesting things.
Yeah, very, 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 very cool. Now, you talk about the code, the identity code.
Yeah.
Code is also one of those words that became popular a few years ago. We're all looking for the code. We all want that secret formula. So talk to me about this code and how I could use it and how to understand it and all of that.
Well, and to build on the terminology, the intent is to crack the code, right? Or break the code, whatever you want to call it. So the code, your identity code, is what I described earlier, contained in this unique combination of characteristics that you need to understand, construct, and then understand it, and then put it into words. That's the identity code. We all have one. It's right there, waiting to be discovered, waiting to be cracked, if you want to say that. It's like you said, though, and this is distressing to me, that most people don't realize that they have it, that it's already in them, that it's there to be tapped into, leveraged, built upon. Pick your verb. That's what I do. I help people crack that code.
And so what are the elements in the identity code?
Well, they're all unique.
Wait a minute. So,
Each of us has our own code.
yeah. So I'm actually thinking. I'm confusing. Maybe I'm no. It's the 8 essential questions. That's what I'm getting at.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, fine. Perfect. So yes, the book, The 8 Essential Questions for Finding Your Purpose and Place in the World, i.e. cracking the code. So there are these 8 essential questions. They have, all of them have exercises attached to them. And they are sequential. They are not random. And the 8 questions are, who am I? What makes me special? Is there a pattern to my life? Where am I going? What is my gift? Who can I trust? What is my message? And will my life be rich? I remembered all 8. That's great.
Yeah.
Those are the 8 questions. And yes, answering each of those questions in sequence not only will help you crack the code, which is question 5, what is my gift? But after that, questions 6, 7, and 8 are really about application.
Right.
Who can I trust is about saying, my God, now I know who I am. I put it into words. When I think about my life through this lens, I take stock of everybody I've known or people who are important to me, close to me. You know, who are the folks I think will really want what I have to give as a human being? You do a whole sorting process, and it's almost involuntary. It happens just like boom. So there's who can I trust? There's what is my message, which is about declaring yourself, finding the opportunities in your life, pardon me, to communicate with people who you are, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's with your family over dinner, whether it's in a room of 500 people and you get up there and you say, you know, I want you to know who I am, who's speaking to you here. Or in your church or wherever, it doesn't matter. But the idea of declaring yourself, being known for who you are is absolutely essential. You know, knowing who you are.
I think it's a driving force that we all have within us. We want to be known for who we are. But let me just interject here and ask you this question. What do you say to people who want to jump to that question? In other words, they don't want to start with question 1, 2, and 3, which I understand are the foundation. You need to go through those questions. But what do you say to the people who say, well, just tell me my message?
Well, I'm the wrong guy to talk to. I can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, that lacks integrity. It's like a tree with no roots, Michelle. I'm the roots guy. You got to have good, strong, healthy, hardy roots. Then your tree will look great.
Yeah, I'm with you. I see that a lot with the people that many people I work with. They well, listen, we're in a fast food culture. People want the answers.
Well, that's fine. That's their choice. You know, I'm not here to proselytize. That's not my job. And my job is to work with people and companies who want to work with me. And I'm happy in that realm.
You know, I'm looking at the people who are, and I'm going to encourage people. I'm looking at the questions on Facebook and the streaming media. You're welcome to put in a question, and we'll see what happens. Of course, right after this, we are going backstage with Larry for premium members of the Mo Mondays community. So if you want to go there, go to community.momondays.com, and we are going to go backstage with Larry and have a private conversation with him for anybody who wants it within the community. Right now, we are talking to Larry Ackerman. He is an expert on identity, and we're just talking about all the steps and questions that you need to ask yourself to kind of go through that journey. And I'm wondering, 8 questions. In your experience, somebody just says, can you repeat the 8 essential questions? And then I'd love to know, in your experience, um, where typically does the epiphany happen for the people that you work with? Is it often at the first one, or is it in the fifth question? So somebody's asking, can you repeat the 8 questions? Of course, I'm sure all the 8 questions are listed on your website, larryackerman.com. So if you miss it here, you could go there. But what are the 8 questions again?
You can actually also, there's a separate website, Michelle, which is the identitycode.com, just about the book. And there, that's all about the 8 questions.
Okay, cool. Theidentitycode.com.
Yeah.
All
That's
right.
all about the book.
If someone posts that in the chat, I'll post it to the live chat. So if somebody wants to do that, identitycode.com.
You got to have the in there.
Theidentitycode.com. Larry, let me ask you this. How often do you share that story about your 4-year-old experience?
All the time.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, there's a really quick and an important story on that. So about 10, maybe 15 years ago, I was going to give a guest lecture thing to a big group out west, like 200 or 300 people. Utah State organized it, whatever. So I'm going to go out there. I'm going to give this talk, and I'm talking to the coordinator, the organizer, and I said, I don't remember his name. Nice guy. I said, this is a business group, and I want you to know that my story is a personal story. I don't know if it's appropriate for this group or not. And he said, I think you need to do this. I told him the story. He said, I think you need to do this because, speaking of trust, this is how people are going to trust you. You're going to know that what you're talking about is deeply personal, not manufactured, not fabricated, not synthesized. So I did it for the first time, big public forum. And I got the most amazing reactions. And I thought, wow, this works. And ever since then, I use it typically when I'm opening a workshop or when I'm, giving a lecture or a talk or whatever.
Now, I have to tell you how gratified I am and validated I feel that you're saying exactly that, because sometimes I feel like, I tell people, a lot of business people that I work with, they say, no, that's personal. I don't want to mix. That's personal. People aren't interested in that. And I said, no, that's exactly what they're interested in. That's what gives you, I couldn't have said it better myself. So thank you for saying that, Larry.
There's a great expression, which I learned years ago as a writer, which is that what is most personal is most universal. And it's never failed to be true.
Absolutely. Preaching to the converted here. I hope everybody watching this, whether it's live or in the recording, you heard what Larry just said, because that is so important. Say it again. What is personal is most...
What is most personal is most universal.
Mm-hmm.
People will find themselves in your story.
Yeah. So glad to hear you say that. All right, and we've got just a couple of minutes. I want to wrap up because I want to get backstage and give us time to get there, because I know it's a long hallway to backstage. That's what it is. It's a long hallway. But what would you tell people? How can they get started on this journey? Like, what would be the easiest, or not easiest, but what would be a first step that they could start You already talked about the symptomology, and my God, our terminology is so similar. You have no idea. But you talked about the presenting symptoms. What would be a first step that do it for individual and for company?
All right. The very first step for an individual, and I mean this sincerely, is to suspend disbelief.
That's
I
interesting.
mean, just because we're all wired to be suspicious, skeptical, maybe fearful, whatever. The first thing you must do if you want to go down this road, take this journey, and it's a beautiful journey, by the way. There's nothing bad you're going to find out. You're only going to discover good stuff. I guarantee that. You have to suspend disbelief. You have to say, you know what? Maybe there's more here than I think. Maybe there's more here than I've known so far. And the moment you can get to that point, not I mean in your head, I do kind of mean in your heart or your gut, then you are ready, my friend. And, stuff just begins to flow. So that's number one for an individual, just suspend disbelief. For companies, companies tend to be naturally more skeptical. And I'm thinking, is there a first step for companies? Yeah. A company needs to get the leadership team to agree to explore. I don't mean open-ended exploration. I mean very precise work but get the leadership team to say, okay, this is probably something we need to do. That's number one. Without that first step, you're not going anywhere.
Right. Of course, you also have to battle, I suppose, you talk about people are fearful. I don't think people are fearful for what I don't think they're afraid to find something bad. I just think they're afraid to find something different, and then they'll have to make a change. And so we talk about identity. Our identities are wrapped up in who we think we are. And oh my God, if I find out that who I really am is different, I don't think I'm going to find out that I'm a bad person, but what other changes will I have to make? And I think that's what people are most fearful about.
Well, nobody's in charge of you other than you. So, I mean, nobody's going to make you make any changes you don't want to make. So there's really very little risk. You're your own boss.
Yeah. I mean, you know that, and I know that through the work that we do. But I can understand. People are just don't. It's a decision that that may or may not be difficult, but they're afraid. But I think no matter what, I absolutely applaud you for the work you're doing. I think it's vital. I talk about I don't say identity, but I talk about core messaging and I wrap it in those kind of terms. So it's really very simple. And I really believe that there are many steps, but there's a direct path to world peace. And if we all did this work, and I say that honestly and genuinely and sincerely, I believe that if we all did this work, it would bring out the humanity in all of us.
I agree.
Good. Well, we're gonna close it on that level. I want to thank you, Larry, for being here and spending time with us. I think the work that you are doing is absolutely vital. I applaud you. I will support you any way I can to keep this work going. We're going to wrap this up. I want to thank everybody. Let me switch over to here. I want to thank everybody for being part of this moTV this month. As you could see, every month we have a different guest, but equally interesting in a different way. And next month is going to be the same. If you want to find out more about moTV, go to momondays.com or join the community.momondays.com. And if you are a premium member, Larry and I will see you backstage. Thank you very much. Well, that's...